What's cooking at Facebook? How about one part happiness, two parts sloppiness? I'm Tonya Hall for ZDNet, and joining me is Tim O'Reilly. He is the founder and CEO of O'Reilly Media and author of the book, WTF, What's the Future and Why It's Up to Us. Welcome, Tim.
Glad to be with you, Tonya.
So you have a very well-recognized name in technology. You've pioneered the space and coined the phrase Web 2.0, among other things. What is the work that you're doing at O'Reilly Media?
Well, O'Reilly is fundamentally a technology learning platform. We started out as a computer book publisher. We added conferences, and we added an online learning platform. And those three pillars really of the business today. Effectively, we teach the next generation of technologists about what's happening on the cutting edge and how to use it in their work.
You recently wrote a book that I just mentioned, What's the Future and Why It's Up to Us, WTF. Why WTF?
Well, obviously, we all say WTF when we hear the tech news today. And the thing that's sweet about WTF is it can be an expression of amazement, and it can also be an expression of dismay. And it seems to me that one of the choices that we face as a society is whether the tech we deploy makes us say the WTF that's equal to oh, or the WTF that's that's equivalent to wow, that's amazing. And I want to basically encourage the industry to do more of the WTF of amazement and delight.
Well, sadly, in the news right now, it's a little bit more about the dismay. In fact, Facebook is in the headlines for misbehaving, specifically as it relates to Cambridge Analytica and data. So first, Facebook ran an experiment. You talk about giants in social media, and Facebook's been in trouble, right? They ran an experiment to see if manipulating the news feed could make users happier. They also decided to allow quote unquote fake news. They got in trouble for having fake news on their platform. And then recently, this week, in fact, Zuckerberg is being grilled by Congress because of the entire Cambridge Analytica scandal and data breaches with users. So my question would be, how will this impact Facebook? Are they going to be able to pivot? Is this the beginning of the end for Facebook?
I am very skeptical that it's the beginning of the end for Facebook. It's too useful a platform to too many people. And, I do think that it's a complex situation. And the three examples you gave are very, very different. Actually, I consider the first one to be a horrible example of privacy advocates getting it wrong, because it seems to me that one of the fundamental features of social media today, and in fact, of almost the entirety of the consumer internet, is about manipulating users for profit. And not only do we, companies do it, we teach it, we celebrate it. There's all these, classes on growth hacking. There's venture capitalists who are encouraging people to do it. And the instant somebody says, well, we could manipulate the feed to make people happy, people are outraged. What do you mean? It's okay to manipulate people to make money, but, boy, try to make them happier. That's a breach of research ethics. How crazy is that? So I look at that. And then when you look at the fake news problem or the Cambridge Analytica problem, that's just sloppiness on Facebook's part. That's a very different matter because clearly they didn't pay enough attention to the opportunities that they were giving to bad actors on the platform. And I don't think it's any different than, like a security breach. And again, it's a little, I take that back. It's a little different from a security breach because people were exploiting Facebook's existing, nobody broke in. They were exploiting Facebook's existing systems. The Cambridge Analytica situation was, users opted in to an app, and then that researcher, the person who created that app sold the data on. Facebook didn't do it. But what Facebook did wrong was they had this over-expansive view of how that you would want not just to give access to your data, but not just your friends' data, but to the friends of your friends. And this was maybe going too far. But there's a lot of parts of what Facebook did that worked, that we all celebrated, that we said, oh, that's great. And you look at all the media that's now wringing their hands, and they were like, wow, we're exploiting this system to get attention. This is great for our news media. And then all of a sudden, oh, Facebook, you're so bad to do this. Nobody understood that this was going to be I shouldn't say nobody, there were people who were warning about it. In fact, quite a few people. But the great mass of users, the great mass of media, they were all happily feeding at the trough, and now they're outraged. So Facebook was sloppy in not thinking through the implications. They were sloppy in not paying attention to the researchers who said, whoa, this is dangerous, bad things are going to happen. But this is I think it's not malevolence. It's not, wow, we're just trying. I mean, there was a part where, why did Facebook do these things? Because it led to the virality and the growth of the platform. And guess what? The stock market said, go for it, boys, go for it. We love you. We love how fast you're growing. And that's kind of one of the things that I kind of talk about in my book. We have this master algorithm in our society that says, grow as fast as you can, grow as big as you can, make as much money as you can. It's called shareholder value thinking, and it rules our economy. And so Facebook was being rewarded for this behavior that now that they got caught with some untoward effects, suddenly everybody is outraged. And I guess I just look at that and I say, look, if we want Facebook to take better care of privacy, if we want other companies to think more about these issues, we have to stop applauding when they, as Mark Zuckerberg famously said, move fast and break things.
So what do you think of the senators and Congress people and their media circus? I mean, you've been following the hearings. What are your thoughts?
Well, what was so striking is how remarkably ignorant they are about the technology. Just fundamental knowledge of how this platform works. The fact, for example, they kept asking, Zuckerberg, will you stop selling our data? And he's like, we don't sell our users' data. The whole point is an ad matching platform. We use the data to put the ads in front of people. We don't give it to other people. The Cambridge Analytica situation, somebody else took their data, which was a permitted use, in other words, because some people had signed up for this app and the app had access to that data, and then that person sold it on illegally. So Facebook didn't do it, but nobody seemed to, well, maybe I shouldn't say nobody, but generally the senators and the congressmen don't seem to understand that. They don't know how, they don't know how Google works. They don't know how Facebook works. They don't know how the internet works. And yet they are proposing to regulate it. But
it certainly appears, I understand that they aren't actually selling the data, but the fact that they're selling use of the data is...
No, they're not. They're not. They're really not. I mean, I think that is, no money changes hands for data. Basically, when people advertise on data, on Facebook, Facebook says, hey, here's a bunch of tools that will let you figure out who you want to get your ad in front of, and we'll use our knowledge of our customers to put your ad in front of those people. Note that the advertiser, the data that you get back from Facebook is very general. It's kind of aggregate information about the demographics, the kind of stuff that, I'll tell you, there are way more people. There are people who do sell data, but Facebook is not one of them. I mean, there are a lot of people who use their apps and put tracking pixels, and then they actually do sell that data. Companies like Axiom and so on. That's the business they're in, but that is not the business that Facebook is in.
Agreed. They are the ones that are in trouble right now, but I would agree with you. So then I guess my question would be, do we need regulation to protect privacy? I mean, is that an issue?
I do think we need regulation to protect privacy, but we have to be careful in what we wish for. So if you look at the long arc of the internet, for example, we had this explosion with the World Wide Web, with blogging, where everybody had their own sort of platform and we were responsible for it. And then we had this great centralizing force with Facebook, where it's one platform that sets the rules. Now, part of what happened was Facebook opened up that platform to other people's apps. And when they did that, that created more opportunity for others. And now with the regulation, with a cutback on the data that's given to apps, with a cutback on, on what can be done with the data, that actually, by others, that actually gives more power to Facebook and is going to lead to further centralization of their power. So I do think it's really important and it's good. And I think things like, the ability to say, show me what you have about me. I think that Facebook being way more transparent about, who has their data and what they're doing with it, cutting back on what they can do with it, closing down a lot of loopholes, I think is super important. And I think that Facebook, can and should understand, what the problems are and be very proactive in saying, these are the things that we're trying to do, and we're willing to be, effectively regulated to do these things. Now, I guess the point is, if, like a good example is this Honest Ads Act about political ads. Facebook has said they want to go along with it, and now we need to be saying, well, does it go far enough? Because one of the things I've seen about it is that it's very limited to ads specifically on candidates and for a relatively limited time window. And I go, so we should be having the debate about what should the time window be and what's a political ad, and the question is, do we have a group of people who are sophisticated enough to do that? And my guess is, in a case like that, the complicit actors are the politicians who want to, to basically have the appearance of limiting political ads on Facebook, but don't really want to limit them. So of course they put forward legislation that's not very good regulation. And I think we have to actually ask ourselves, what body of people is knowledgeable enough and concerned enough about the issues that they should be getting a primary voice? And it's sort of interesting because, Congress shouldn't be having these theatrical hearings with Mark Zuckerberg. They should be meeting, with people like Zeynep Tufekci or Renee DiResta, people who've been, or Phil Howard from the Oxford Internet Institute, people who've been researching this, who know what the problems are, who could help them to craft reasonable, regulations that actually do something and solve real problems, as opposed to a bunch of grandstanding.
That's great advice, Tim. And I think hopefully people are listening to that. I really appreciate your time. If somebody wants to connect with you, maybe they want to get a copy of your book, how can they go about doing that?
Well, there's a website specifically for the book and for my other writing, which is called WTFeconomy.com. I'm at Tim O'Reilly on Twitter. And of course, for everything my company does, you should go to O'Reilly.com.
And you've definitely got some great insights for the book. I highly recommend you pick it up and get your own copy, whether it's on Audible or maybe on Amazon. If you want to follow me, you can. If you want to follow Tim, you can do that as well. I am actually at tonyahall.net. You can catch more of my interviews here on ZDNet or Tech Republic. Or if you go to my website, there's a link to all my social platforms, including Facebook.